I worked out that if I ever got the chance to lead a environment and build and create an environment which is always around people, I'm not going to do it like this. It was built on fear. It was built on, we have to win or we go home. And as you know, as founders, you just don't win every single day, right? It's bloody hard work. We didn't build Gymshark for a financial event, and I would never recommend that because I think you'll make some really bad short-term decisions. Build your business if it's going to outlast generations, and if you do that, the numbers and the valuation will look after itself. That's why I don't care about shareholders. I do care about shareholders because I'm a shareholder in many businesses, but don't build your business for shareholder value. Build your business because it's right for the business and right for the brand. I come from like a working class, like true northern background as such, and which then by default, I sort of love the underdog. So after spending sort of 6 months of sort of not doing very much after stepping down from the board at GS, I was like, what do I do next? And I worked out, I'm rubbish at lots of things, but I worked out I'm pretty good at a couple of things. And the thing that sort of really drives me is backing the underdog. I just love the underdog.
Hello and welcome to Inspired Sounds, Rathbones' exclusive podcast dedicated to supporting and empowering entrepreneurs. In each episode, we dive into the journey of inspirational entrepreneurs and founders who we invite to share the thrills and spills of their own journey. We hope you enjoy listening.
I'm Nick Jones, Divisional Director, responsible for the Rathbones office in Birmingham. Thank you for coming. Thanks for joining us this evening. We've been friends for quite a long time, so I'm really too long. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation, talking through your experience. You're widely known for Gymshark, as we've got on the screen, but I wonder if we could start with For Now, which you founded in late 2022. Could you tell us about that and the reasoning, the objective of that?
Not where people normally start, so I'll that's thrown me a little bit.
Sorry.
Yeah. So when you're lucky enough to be and I talk about being lucky enough because I think you would need a little bit of luck to be CEO of Gymshark through to unicorn state for sort of 7 years, but spending 10 years at that brand and becoming chair after CEO. By the way, if you ever get offered a chair role, decline it. The most boring role on earth. I love helping create stuff, and I'm obsessed by people. So, but 10 years at Gymshark, and you know, you got the picture on the screen there. It was literally like a rocket ship, and people say to me, why leave that organisation? I was only supposed to be there for 3 years. I'm actually only 25 years old, and I sort of promised Ben, Francis, and his dad, Steve, that as I said, I would sort of help it get it to a certain level, and it was so much fun that I decided to stay on for a lot longer. But yeah, really good question, because I'm hugely into purpose, and you know, you can have all the money in the world and you work out very quickly that money gives you one thing, which is choice, and that's really it. So at my right young age, after finishing with Gymshark 2 years ago, actually almost to the week, I stepped down from the board there, was what do I do next? I worked out I'm terrible at golf. It's the only game I know where you try harder and you get worse. So if there's any golfers in the room, you will share my pain. And I'm even worse at gardening. So those two things combined made me think about actually what I want to do next, because I was lucky enough to be effectively a 10% shareholder in a business that got valued at $1.5 billion back in 2020. So like, what do you do with that, and how do you even start there? So I'm sure you'll have a question on that in a bit, but I'm from the northeast of England, so apologies if you can't understand me. As my mam, we don't say mum or mom, we say mam up in the northeast. There's only me, Ant, and Dec who says mam, I think. But she said there's two kinds of people in this world, and she's right. She said those who are Geordies and those who wish they were. And I think it's great advice I've had. But I come from like a working class, like true northern background as such, and which then by default, I sort of love the underdog. So after spending sort of 6 months of sort of not doing very much after stepping down from the board at GS, I was like, what do I do next? And I worked out, I'm rubbish at lots of things, but I worked out I'm pretty good at a couple of things. And the thing that sort of really drives me is backing the underdog. I just love the underdog, and a lot of founders and a lot of entrepreneurs, of which there's many of you in the room, many of you would have probably started your organization because you're trying to solve a problem or actually maybe a bad experience that you've had. And already chatting around the room before even starting tonight, I've been more inspired in 10 minutes than I have probably in the last 6 months based on some of the founders I've met in the room. So for me, your purpose has to be something that gets you out of bed a little bit earlier. You actually work out. Certainly I was lucky enough to be able to start working post Gymshark where I didn't have to earn any more money, which was quite a nice privileged position to be in. So what do I do? At Gymshark we had, and if Philip Dole was here, who was my CFO for many, many years, his favorite moment at Gymshark was having £100 million in the bank with no debt and no external funding. So that's how well we built the organic fiscal model, right? Pretty good with the physical inventory. That's his favorite moment, but that's finance people for you, right? For me, it was a case of, at that point, we should have given back a lot more to the community. We should have done a whole lot of CSR work. We should have done a lot more work with charities, and we did zip. We did nothing. And that's my responsibility as CEO. So I talk about, people say to me all the time, oh my God, you're the CEO who took Gymshark from 5 to 500, and you, I did a terrible job in many respects, and one of them was the lack of giving back. So the first thing I worked out was actually I need to give back. And that came out of a train ride. So I'm based in Worcestershire, literally in the middle of England. So I'm getting a nosebleed, especially in my accent. I came to Rathbones actually reception, and they nearly called the police with my accent. I think they thought I was here to burgle the place. But for me, it was like, I need to give back. And as I said, came out a train journey. I was coming out the German markets. Birmingham have this very famous German market, obviously lead up to Christmas. And I was getting on the train, and there was 3 young lads. I was with my wife, with a couple of our friends and their partners. And there was 3 young lads on the train, 16, 17-year-old lads. And 2 of the lads had their feet all over the seats. And I've been brought up in a world that you don't do that. So I said to the lads politely, is there any chance you can get your feet off the seats? And they give me a whole load of verbals, and my wife said, you're going to get beaten up. I was like, no, we're not. I've been very polite. And eventually they took the feet off the seats, and I said, is there any chance the ladies can sit down? So that was 2 of the 3 guys. The 3rd guy was really quiet. And his name, I got to know him, his name was Ali. And I said to Ali, I said, why are you knocking around with these 2 guys? They don't seem to be very nice humans. And he said, I don't have many friends. He said, this is who I've sort of just got attached to just by default. So I said, where do you live? He said, I live in a place called Kidderminster. Now, Kidderminster for me is about 3 miles away from where I live. And I said, I know Kidderminster really well. Where do you live? He said, I live in St. Basil's. And I was like, St. Basil's? What's your, my naivety here was like, are your parents what is it? And he's like, no, St. Basil's is a young homeless charity. Me and my sister in this dormitory in Kidderminster. My mum was on crack cocaine and my father's in prison. I was like, wow. I said, what do you do? He said, I go to college. This kid's 16, 17 years old. I said, what do you do at college? He said, I'm doing a sports diploma course. And I'm like, 16, 17, he's doing sport. He's probably heard of a brand called Gymshark. I said, have you heard of a brand called Gymshark? He went, yeah. I went, do you fancy doing a week work experience? So he went, yeah. And I went, I said, I think I might be able to arrange that. I didn't tell him what I did. And he said, nobody can get into Gymshark. It's impossible to get into that environment. So I said, here's my number, give me a call. Saturday morning, he called me and he said, Steve, it's Ali from the train. I said, Ali, good news is you've got a week's work experience. I need to speak to your college to do a risk assessment, and you're going to start in 2 weeks' time. He was like, how on earth have you managed that? I said, well, the one thing I didn't tell you is that I work at the business. And he then started to swear at me down the phone. And as we came off the call, he's like, brilliant, here's my email address, you're going to send me all the details. And he said, just before we got off the phone, he said, what do you do at Gymshark? I said, I'm the CEO. He was like, and you can imagine the swear words after that point. Anyway, he came in, he did a week's work experience. This kid was like the most inquisitive, human I've ever met. And you work out sometimes in life, somebody just needs a little bit of a break up that ladder. He'd fallen foul through bad parenting and just a bit of bad luck. He'd fallen foul into friendship groups. Anybody who's got kids here, you get obsessed with your kids' friendship groups because that's what helps define them. And he was probably going down a slippery slope here. Anyway, he went on to a customer service role at Gymshark, and then we found out about 2 years ago he went on to university. He's now at University of Exeter, and he still writes to me every single year saying, "Listen, this is how I'm getting on." And it was great. So people say to me, that was like a sliding door moment for him, and I was like, yeah, it was a sliding door moment for him, but more importantly, it was a sliding door moment for me. So you go, how do you replicate the rocket ship journey of Gymshark for 10 years, like doing what we did, and we made lots of mistakes, which we will come on to. But my goodness me, that gave me purpose about actually I've got the permission and the ability to change somebody's life who's just an underdog. So you then start doing that, getting into charity, and you work out that actually you start giving all your money away to charity. You don't have any money yourself. So it was, how do I able to give back, but actually do that in a sustainable way? So the other bit that I worked out was I was pretty good at building and scaling SME businesses. So businesses that we'll call it a couple of million quid to 50 million quid and becoming £100 million plus businesses. So we started to build a team to basically help scale those businesses, and the money that we make from that then goes to effectively fund the charity work we did, and we still do so.
So that's for now. So
that's for now.
And that's for now. So are you happy to share a couple of examples of some fast growing businesses that you are working with and have worked with, just to set a scene for that?
Yeah. So excuse my French here, and just have a quick raise of hands of how many founders in the room. Yeah, quite a lot of you, right? You're all f***ing lunatics. So founders are absolute lunatics, right? They generally start their business or start their brand because they're trying to solve a problem that, as I said, they've either experienced or trying to find a gap in the market. The other founders that, there's another sort of two words that probably define founders, which I think is probably better, which is they bring magical chaos to organizations. They bring a lot of magic, but boy, do you lot bring a lot of chaos. And the businesses that we work with are generally sweet spot between, as I said, 5 and 20, 30 mil. Probably two of note. And back to Underdog was a brand, it's a jewelry brand. I know nothing about jewelry, called D. Louise. It's based here in London. And Liv Jenkins, who is the founder of that business, reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, Steve, we need help. I've got this business, there's 3 of us in it. We've got it to £1 million, but it's losing money, and we don't know what we're doing. So I reached back out to her and I said, Liv, thanks for your message. I can't help you. I know nothing about jewelry. She said, yeah, but you know how to build a brand. So I said, listen, I'm in London. I'll have a coffee with you, but I don't think I can help you. Long story short, I found out that I said, why you call this brand D. Louise? She said, my mum was called Deborah Louise. We lost her to cancer 3 years ago. So I wanted to build something around like the legacy in her name. Now I'm back to Underdog. I'm like, oh my God, she's doing what I don't want to do. And that's just straight to my heart, right? So I'm like I'm half in. I then find out that her brother committed suicide about 1.5 years after her mum died of cancer because he just couldn't handle life. So I was like, doubly in. Now, Philip Dorr, remember the guy who likes the 100 million quid in the bank, CFOs, finance guys are weird, as I said. And I called it Philip because I also have a part of my business where we invest into those brands as well. And I said, Philip, there's a girl I've met and I think we should invest into them. And he said, Steve, we don't invest without doing the right level of DD. You know that, Steve. And I was like, Philip, sometimes you need to take a punt. Sometimes you just need to take a punt, and it's a gut feel. So that business was doing £1 million. It's now doing 15 million quid. It's making an EBITDA about 15%. And you've got somebody, and by the way, and I've done none of the work. My team's done none of the work. All we've done is we've given this young team the confidence to just go out and build that business. So there's a great example of somebody who's sort of like been there and done it. And then something about female founders at the moment. Don't know what's in the water, but there's a beauty brand called Refy, R-E-F-Y, who are based in Manchester. And actually, it's effectively run by 2 people. A lady called Jess Hunt, who's a big beauty influencer on the various social channels. But the real brains behind that business is a lady called, a lady, she's like still sort of young, really young to me, is a girl, and a lady called Jenna Meek. And she reached out to me also on LinkedIn, and they were doing 5 million quid. And she said, yeah, I think we've got a good business model. My first question is, what's your gross margin? She said 82%. I said, I'm in. Because the maths have to work, right? The maths do have to work. You can't just build a brand on passion without the profitability and the cash working. And she showed a superpower that most leaders can't show, which is vulnerability. She said, like, I think I'm onto something, but I don't know how to take it to the next level. So we built her a North Star. And Jenna, if you follow her or you follow Dragon's Den on Instagram, she has just been appointed as the new guest celebrity dragon on Dragon's Den this coming season. So, and that brand's gone from 5 million to 55 million in like 2 or 3 years. All about building this North Star and really helping her. And again, just for clarity, me and my team can take zero credit. We're just the facilitators of them believing themselves and just keeping them super disciplined. So probably two female founders. There's definitely some, I hate to say it, males, but the female founders are definitely winning at the moment. Exactly right.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thanks, Steve. And you've mentioned North Star a couple of times there, which we'll come on to shortly. But before we do that, you've talked about founders and fast-growing businesses there. Prior to Gymshark, you were at Reebok.
Yeah.
Can you share with us the pros and cons, if you like, of your experience of Big Corp?
Yeah, Big Corp. After moving out of Newcastle at 18, I did a 4-year degree at Manchester, learned how to drink alcohol pretty well in that 4 years, got a lousy, or very average degree, but then got the opportunity to go and work in America for 5 years. And the first place I stopped off there was Kansas. Anybody been to Kansas City? Good. You're lucky. It's got a wonderful American football team. The Chiefs are my team, and actually now being massively made famous because of Taylor Swift and her relationship with Travis Kelce. So Kansas City was my first stop. And I then got the opportunity to move to San Diego in California. San Diego, Newcastle upon Tyne, very, very similar. The commonality stops that it's relatively close to the water. So my first sort of, introduction to work was actually somebody in the corporate world back in me, which happened to be Reebok. And what the corporate world does is it allows you to be sort of like super knowledgeable in terms of becoming like this really good generalist. So like if somebody said to me back in my university business degree, could I like really move myself around a P&L and understand working cap, and I would have probably lied and made a really bad answer. So what the corporate world did was really invest into you and really sort of fast track you through that system. So a lot of the stuff that we applied into Gymshark came from that experience, a phenomenal experience. The corporate world also teaches you some, what I'd say, very dodgy experience as well. I happened to be in this sort of fast track team. I was like one of the alpha males who really was like shining, and I would rather die than lose, or certainly back then I would rather die than lose. And my boss at the time, I won't mention his name, he was like, we need more alpha males in this business. That's how we're going to grow this brand. And actually what I worked out really quickly was that anybody who didn't fit into that category, he literally disregarded. Like you were treated as almost a second class citizen. So you were pigeonholed. And I worked out that, albeit I thought he was wonderful commercially, I worked out that if I ever got the chance to lead a environment and build and create an environment which is always around people, I'm not going to do it like this. It was built on fear. It was built on, we have to win or we go home. And as you know, as founders, you just don't win every single day, right? It's bloody hard work. So corporate world taught me two things. It taught me professionalism and actually how to invest into people from a training and development perspective, but it also taught me how not to build an environment. And that's not to say that all corporate businesses can't build right environments, by the way. But it sort of was done with a little bit less soul than I would have liked.
So you put words in your mouth, that you were able to carry forward areas that you wanted to carry forward in business, but also identify areas that you didn't want to carry forward in business from that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Gymshark, we went from like 7 people to 1,250 people in 5 years. When we hired senior executives from Nike and Lululemon and people like that, we worked out that they had to, for the first 6 months, they had to unlearn what they'd learned in that corporate environment to actually make it work in Gymshark. And it's really interesting. So I actually went through an unlearning phase as I came out of that corporate environment into a much more entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Gymshark, 2014, you met Ben, you met Lewis, I think you met Ben's dad as well. Can you share with us a little bit about that initial meeting, what your first thoughts were, and did it change?
I know I didn't have any grey hair before then. So the first, I'm big into value setting, the way you treat people. You know, I always say to my kids, if you treat people well and you work hard, you can't go too far wrong in life. When I first met, so I hate arrogance, I hate ego. I think ego kills businesses, and unfortunately, a lot of leaders have ego because they don't have any vulnerability, which they work out eventually. That's a superpower. But I met Ben and Lewis. Lewis is the other co-founder. He never gets talked about, but he was there back in the day. So the business is 18 months old. It's gone from naught to 4 million quid in 2 years. It's got 7 people in it. Average age was 19 and a half years old, either brothers, sisters, or high school mates. I took that average age up just a little bit. But when I first met them, don't be cheeky. When I first met them, we met at a local Hilton hotel in Bromsgrove in the middle of Worcestershire. And I hate ego and I hate arrogance. And they both had Audi R8s. One had a gold-plated Audi R8, and one had a lovely soft blue colour, which is fine. I don't have an issue with anybody driving a nice car. Like, if you're into cars, great. I have an issue when you start doing donuts in the car park as you come to park your car. It's a true story. So the first time I met Ben, he was doing donuts in his gold-plated Audi R8. And I remember the guy who introduced me to them, he said to me after meeting, how did it go? I was like, these guys are arseholes. Like, I said, these guys are arseholes. And if Ben was sitting here tonight, by the way, he'd go, yeah, I was super arrogant. They think they were just the smartest guys in the room. Everything they touched in Bromsgrove, like they were the guys in Bromsgrove. So I was a bit like, can I work with these guys? Can I not? And somebody said to me, you're taking a big risk coming out the corporate world to go and work with these 2 young lads with their 5 high school mates. And I was like, well, if the worst comes to the worst, I'll just get another job. I've got a pretty good CV. I can just go and get another job. So actually, it wasn't too much of a risk for me back then. Positively with Ben and Lewis, what I'd also worked out is that Gymshark, certainly in its sector, were building a new era of brand that never existed back in 2014. So if I take you back to 2014, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube existed. Like, the way people build brands, the way that Adidas, Nike, Reebok in that world built brands is that you built massive amounts of product, you stuck it into as many retailers and you stuck it into as many geographies across the world. And that's how you built your brand and your business. These guys were like, we're not doing any of that. We want to build a community. We want to build it on YouTube, and we're going to do it with a very small product range. And we're basically going to find a product that the other brands effectively don't make to effectively fit our aesthetic bodybuilding appearance, which those brands didn't do. They didn't. So, albeit they were lunatics, I won't swear again, and they brought a lot of chaos, they were actually true pioneers. Like, those brands, like Shopify, everybody's heard of Shopify, right? It's a platform. Shopify, almost was in its, I think Gymshark was Shopify's 3rd customer on their platform, just to give you an idea. So, and became, I think, their 2nd biggest customer within the next 2 years globally. So my first introduction to the guys at Gymshark was absolute chaos. And I'll tell you a small story before I go into what we introduced into the business to take it to the next level. Was how you incentivize people, because I am obsessed with building environments, which is all about people. I am obsessed with people. And I'm obsessed with behavior and values and standards, because that's how you build environments. But you also have to pay people well, and you have to incentivize people well, because a pat on the back does not pay the mortgage. And I remember saying to Ben, how do you incentivize people? He said, we've got a great bonus program, Steve. Have you heard of rock, paper, scissors? I was like, yeah. I used to call me dad at this point, by the way. I was like, hey, I'm not that old. I said, what happens with rock, paper, scissors? He said, at the end of the year, the 7 people, well, the 5 people, because they didn't include him and Lewis in it, would get £1,000 each. And he said, but you have to come to my office. His office was a desk. And you have to do rock, paper, scissors, and a best of 3. That's really important. And if you win, your £1,000 goes to £3,000. I was like, I'm in here. This is like £3,000 for a 19-year-old back. That's pretty good money just on some rock, paper, scissors. And I said, and what happens if you lose? He said, oh, you get all. And I was like, oh my goodness me, like we're not going to really incentivize people on a business that was going from like 0 to 4 million quid in the first 2 years. But people said to me, what was the defining moment at Gymshark? There was one defining moment at Gymshark, which was Black Friday 2015. This, again, pioneers that done such a good job at building this community. Tens of thousands of people landing on the website. Never did discounting at all in the year apart from Black Friday. And these systems completely crashed. We lost 40% of our customer base overnight. If Gymshark were applying that to their numbers today, it's about 10 million customers, to give you an idea. 10 million active customers, it would kill the business today, right? So, like people say to me, like defining moment at Gymshark must have been about success. It was the opposite. It was about failure. And I remember Ben coming to me going, I don't want to do this anymore. And he actually looked as old as me at this point. And he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And I asked him one question. I said, do you want to be the biggest fitness brand in Bromsgrove? I said, which is fine if you want to be a lifestyle brand. There's nothing wrong with being a lifestyle business. Or do you want to become a true global brand? I said, because the answer to that will dictate where we go next and what we do next. And he said, I want to be the British answer that Lululemon is to Canada, that Adidas is to Germany, and that Nike is to America. And I said, okay, we now need to go employ people in areas where you think you're God. Where you think, and Ben had an ego back in 2015. And I said, so as long as you don't ever take this in the right spirit, founders, don't ever play your founder card in a meeting, because I'll throw you out the meeting. Don't ever play your majority shareholder card in a meeting. I hate shareholders, I don't like shareholders, because sometimes we run businesses based on shareholder value. Don't ever do that. Run your business to be the best version of itself, and the shareholder value will look after itself. And the amount of organizations that get that wrong, the wrong way around, is unbelievable. And the third one, he said 3 rules. I went, yeah, there's a third rule, which is rule number 1, and it still exists today at Gymshark. You can't be late. Because Ben, whatever meeting we ever had, he always waltzed in 20 minutes late. And it used to be traffic. You couldn't blame kids, he didn't have any. It couldn't have been the donuts, or it could have been the donuts in the car park, but it was like 20 minutes late, like historically, traditionally. And I said, then that behavior will allow everybody else to behave in the same manner. But more importantly, it tells me that you don't respect anybody else's time apart from yourself. And I said, we can't build an organization built on that. So I said, as long as you are happy to sign up to those 3 rules, then let's do this. And to be fair to him, that's when the real arrogance of Ben actually changed. And if you met Ben today, he is in fact, you've interviewed him. He's the most humble, very rich, most successful under 35, great hair, has no grey hair, hasn't shaved, beautiful. I hate him. No, he's a really humble fella, and he's achieved a lot of things with the right people behind him.
So was that experience where the North Star shape comes from?
Yeah, so I'm just going to, because people like to take photos back, but I'm also happy for Paula to share these slides as well. There's nothing sensitive in these slides. So I'm not going to get up and do a huge keynote, but I'm obsessed. Like, back to founders. Founders are magical chaos. What you found with founders is they're not very disciplined. They are like butterflies on a leaf. And what I mean by that is, founders, we've got a great opportunity this week, but we've got a bigger opportunity the next week, and then we've got a bigger opportunity, and we end up like being this butterfly finding the bigger leaf, and we never ever finish anything. And actually then your brand never resonates, or your business never resonates. And you don't have to be a D2C consumer community-based brand. You can be a B2B brand and the same things happen. So what do I do with, like, I've worked with 45 brands in the last 3 years, from the Molly Mays to the Refis I was with Johnny Wilkinson, the rugby legend, this morning, helping his One Living business. And it's the same recipe. It's 4 buckets. Like, I like to keep terminology really simple. Why? Because I'm a Geordie. My last book I read was Mr. Topsy-Turvy. And I like to keep language simple, because not only has it got to resonate with the CFO, it's actually got to resonate with your high school intern that's coming out who doesn't understand that big language. And when you're trying to galvanize 1,250 people in 5 offices across 4 continents, you need to keep the terminology really simple. So I will stand up for this because it's easier for me to explain. So you've got a pyramid here, and you'll get used to this pyramid in terms of, I'm obsessed with people flying in formation. 4 buckets on your North Star. First bucket is purpose. Now, founders are really good at purpose. They've generally created something that, as I said, solves a problem, or has irritated them, or they've had a bad experience. But what I mean by purpose is your business is, it's the why. Why does it exist? Why does it exist? Most founders are phenomenal at that first segment. Once you work out why you exist, you then got to work out who you exist for. And that's about your audience. Founders are an absolute show at bucket number 2 because they're like butterfly. I remember meeting Molly May a few months ago. Molly, who are you trying to sell to? All females everywhere. I said, that's 4 billion. How big's your marketing budget? Before she could even answer, I said, not big enough, because it never is. So you have to be focused and laser focused when it comes to your purpose and your audience. And most founders can do the first thing well, but they can't do the second thing well. And the combination of those 2 first buckets, like that's your brand positioning. Why do you follow all the brands that you buy into? Because they do those 2 buckets really, really, really well. Once you worked out those 2 buckets, people said to me, what was the superpower at Gymshark in terms of like the North Star? The values and the standards, how we're going to behave, how we're going to exist. So how do we exist as a brand? But also how do we exist as an employer and how do we exist as employees? And that's how you build environments, because people build businesses. You can have all the AI in the world, but people still are the fundamental biggest asset in your organization. Now, if I bring Philip Dorr back in, I'm glad Philip's not here, by the way, he'd be throwing stuff at me. CFOs in the room or finance would go, yeah, I like the first 3 buckets, but isn't that a bit nice and fluffy and where we feel warm about ourselves and we get our marker pens out and it all looks nice and pretty? And he would be right. Those 3 buckets in isolation are not enough on the North Star. And the 4th bucket is simply put is your business model. And the way I bring that to life is the maths have to work. You can't have a phenomenal purpose and you're burning and hemorrhaging money at the bottom. So you've got to make sure that your model from a profit and working capital is also kept simple and just fundamentally works. And the amount of people who over-engineer and make their big business complex. So when I get a call to say, can you come and help our brand? It's not to solve a problem and growth. It's actually to simplify their business because they've overcomplicated it really quickly. So my advice to any founder in the room is try and keep your business model as simple as possible for as long as possible. You'll just do a much better job with your business.
So does that bring us nicely onto the lessons that you learned during that period?
So again, I'll flick through because I think there's probably, so actually I'll just talk about one value before I go into lessons learned. The other thing I love about founders is where you bring the chaos, you also bring the magic. And magic for me is like disruption. Like we had to be the speedboat where everybody else is the oil tanker. Where everybody was zagging, we were zigging. COVID, we signed up to a Regent Street store in COVID, in lockdown, because everybody was bailing out of real estate, right? We were like, no, this is going to come back. Let's go back into it. And this photograph actually you see on the screen this is our first attempt at physical retail in New York and Lower Mercer. If you know New York really well, there's a famous street called Lower Mercer Street where Nike sort of launch all their exclusive sneakers collection and all that kind of stuff. And we launched this store. We had a physical store for a weekend, and we launched the store. And by the way, if you ever went to the store and never bought any of the product was absolutely terrible. But we launched it off one Instagram post, and when we turned up to the store on the Saturday morning, the queue to get into the store was a kilometre-long line queue. It was an 8-hour queue. So the other thing I really want you guys to carry on doing, and I say this to founders all the time, is just be as that disruptive as you can, because you're probably not going to develop your business by chance. You're more likely to develop your business by change. So keep your business as simple as possible for as long as possible, but be disruptive within that discipline, if that makes sense. In terms of lessons learned, and I'll come back to actually my Canada geese analogy. Probably the first one was focus on progress rather than perfection. Again, founders is terrible. A lot of founders, have you launched your website yet? No, because it's not quite right. It'll never be right. Just launch it, and then test and learn. Just keep testing and learning all the time. So most founders want perfection. That's how you built. Like marginal gains are way more important. I worked out very quickly, because I was a perfectionist, I worked out very, very quickly that perfection does not exist, whether we like it or not. So that was the first lesson. Second lesson is a big one. And it's back to butterflies on a leaf. In the UK, we love a to-do list, don't we? We love a to-do list on a Monday. And we love that therapeutic feeling, if you're still using a pen and a notebook. oh, I've just put a line through that thing on my to-do list. And when you get to Friday, you find out that your list is longer than it was on a Monday. And we end up never finishing anything. So one thing that we sort of learned at Gymshark is that we're going to start less and we're going to finish more. And I think once you get into the cycle of never getting through that, like work becomes really difficult. And Saturday night, I remember Sunday night, should I say, feeling like, oh my goodness me, I've got to go to work tomorrow. And at Gymshark, we sort of created this Sunday night feeling that Sunday night had to feel like Christmas Eve. Imagine that. You didn't give out presents on the Monday morning, but we built this environment based on actually starting less and finishing more, based on this sort of Christmas Eve feeling every Sunday, where people used to cancel holidays because they had FOMO about what was going on in the business, like legitimate stories, honest stories. And unfortunately, in the UK, we have this life where, and I'm going to smile here because we probably, a lot of us been through this and maybe even going through this now, where we go through our life and we go to bed on a Sunday night and we go, we got to go to work on a Monday. And what happens when we get to work on a Monday, or we work from home now on a Monday because nobody goes into offices on a Monday, is we do this. We go, can't wait until the Friday. When we get to Friday, we have a wonderful weekend with our family and friends. We have the Sunday night feeling, and we do the same thing. And we repeat that for 52 weeks of the year, for 40 years of our working life. And when we get to 60, 65, we go, I wish I'd have done it differently. So the thing that helps that is by effectively taking things off your to-do list and working out what's really non-negotiable. Like if you really think about the non-negotiable things when you build your business, it's a very, very short list. And unfortunately, most people, it's a very long list. So start less, finish more. This is a bit of artwork in my house. I know I Geordie collecting artwork. Who would have thought it? And in Newcastle, there's a famous saying which says, shy Bens get out. For anybody who's trying to work that out, it means shy kids get nothing. If you do not ask, you will not get. And it's all about bravery. And the people who stop you being brave in organizations are the finance team. We hate the finance team. We hate the finance team, don't we? So what we did at Gymshark is to even like get the finance team to think about bravery, is that we actually carved out like a very small percentage of our P&L where it was like a test and learn budget. Philip couldn't beat anybody up about that test and learn budget. And it wasn't a lot of money. It might have been £500,000 a year, but you know, when we're huge at this point, multi-100 million pound business. But he couldn't hold anybody to account because that test and learn budget was all about finding the viral moment. And the viral moment that I showed you about that store in New York, if we didn't have a test and learn budget, that store would never have happened. We would never have transcended this brand in the US to be a £300 million business just in the US. So, like, be brave. The numbers have to work, but you just be brave. 4, we are terrible at this. We have a bad sales week. We have a bad sales day, and our whole world completely caves in. And honestly, the best leaders, the best founders, the best leadership teams that can keep perspective on actually what's really important. If you can do this well, my goodness me, you've got the superpower of all superpowers, because we're not very good at this. We are not very good. We panic. And when the leaders panic, guess what happens in your business? The entire organization. And now you have got chaos. And we start blaming people. And I keep on telling CEOs this all the time. When your business is going well, you have to give all the way the credit. And this goes for founders as well. When it goes badly, you have to take full responsibility. You can't go out and blame people. And that's about galvanizing an environment. And the 5th one is my favorite, actually. We didn't have many policies at Gymshark. We had a talent policy, a recruitment policy, which was this. We would rather have a hole than an arsehole in the business. So I don't care how talented you are. Like, if you're going to come in and disrupt the formation that we're building, like, we would rather not have you in the team. And the people I had to unfortunately exit in my time as CEO, were probably the most well-rounded commercial people that you'll ever see. But they just had an ego. And there's a guy, the chief product officer at Gymshark, he was formidable. He changed our P&L by 5 percentage points. That's huge in a £500 million business, huge. But if I'd been to Tenerife, he'd been to 11 Tenerife. That's just the way he worked. And the thing is, we've all met them. We've absolutely all met them. And there's a guy who I'll show you a video who does a much better job of explaining what I mean here, and it will really resonate. And we might even have some arseholes in the audience tonight. So just check yourself about, actually, am I the arsehole? Because I have to sometimes check whether I'm the arsehole too, by the way. And to go back to probably the lesson, I'm just going to go back a couple of slides here, and back to sort of the arsehole of profanity, is I am obsessed with Canada geese. Canada geese. Again, a romantic Geordie coming up for the second time, right? I collect art and I'm obsessed with Canada geese. Why am I obsessed with Canada geese? Because they fly in a V formation. They're the only flock of birds to fly in this formation. And they get to their end destination far more efficiently, far more effectively than any other flock of birds. Now, what you'll find in these flock of birds is that you might get a couple of birds that fly up and a couple of birds that fly down. You're not perfectly formed. It's not perfect. You'll never find a 10 out of 10 organization. But they're generally in line, and that's fine. When you get a bird flying in the opposite direction, they are called a culture f***er, and they cannot stay in your business. And they're generally the highest performing person in your business, and they can't stay in your environment because they're quietly killing it. So lessons learned, I say 5, but ultimately the 5 drive this. And as I said, if you can get your business to fly like Canada geese, my goodness me, you got something special.
Thank you. And so these elements built Gymshark to unicorn status. Can you talk a little bit around the sales process? I don't know if the intention at the very outset was to build a business to sell, or whether it was based on the values rather than building something to sell. But then you get to the point where private equity are talking to you. What's the best way, or what was your experience of dealing with that professionally for the business? And then secondly, as you said earlier on, you had equity in Gymshark, so that then resulted in a financial event for you and your family. Had you been able to afford yourself any time to plan what you were going to do with the proceeds of that landing with you?
No. It's the short answer. I guess to answer the first part of the question, did we build Gymshark for a financial event? No. So we built Gymshark to outlast generations. That was the view. So if you speak to Ben even today, in fact, if you met Ben when I first met him, it was like, we need to probably de-risk at some point, Ben. He's like, I'm never selling this business to anyone. And I think what he meant is I want to make sure that I control the narrative of where this brand and where this community is going that's following this brand. I don't think he ever meant that he didn't want to de-risk. And I meet a lot of people who go, they almost don't want to use the words, I'm building this for a financial event. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with making money. It's not a dirty thing to say. What you work out, by the way, when you do have that moment, is that money gives you one thing and it gives you choice. It doesn't make you any happier. In fact, the happiest people I know are probably the wealthiest people I know. And it's really interesting. Until you get to that square, it's difficult to explain. So to answer the first part of your question, we didn't build Gymshark for a financial event, and I would never recommend that because I think you'll make some really bad short-term decisions. Build your business if it's going to outlast generations, and if you do that, the numbers and the valuation will look after itself. That's why I don't care about shareholders. I do care about shareholders because I'm a shareholder in many businesses. But don't build your business for shareholder value. Build your business because it's right for the business and right for the brand. And the rest of the value should look after it, or you've got more opportunity and certainly more choice at that point. So there was never, as I said, it was never the plan. We then got talked to about we should de-risk. This business now at 400 million quid. It's a very high EBITDA business. It's very cash rich, as I explained with Philip in the room. And we were given some great advice of de-risking. So we de-risked. We went out to market. We partnered with PwC until I found out that Tom Copeland, who was running the team, was a Sunderland fan. I'm a Newcastle fan, and I'm working with a Sunderland supporter. He would never have got the gig, by the way. But Tom's become a good mate of mine now. And you definitely need somebody who is like in your corner independently. What I also worked out with an event is like private equity VCs are like the devil. Like everybody says, private equity is the devil. And there's probably some devil organizations out there. I will keep it really in layman's terms because I like to keep in some, like doing an event with a PE is like getting married. And the best way to describe it is you don't want to get divorced because it's costly, it takes a lot of time and it ends in tears. So make sure you date before you marry. So we had lots of organizations. We had like 32 organizations circling us when we went out to de-risk about 20-25% of the business. And we whittled the 32 down to about 5 very quickly based on this narrative. don't tell us how to build our community, and do not play with our culture. And about 16 of those private equity organisations literally dropped out overnight. I remember Ben coming to me going, what have we done? We just lost 16 people and 16 organisations. And I said, yeah, but we've got the right organisations left in play.
Yeah.
So for me, like, treat PE with the greatest respect. They're not always the devil. We were lucky enough to partner with General Atlantic. The other advice is, do not follow the size of check. Don't follow the money. Like, General Atlantic were not the biggest bidder on Gymshark at this event. But we felt that they were the right partner in two ways. We felt that they were the best culture fit in terms of our value set, and we felt that they could add value where we needed help, i.e. retail experience where we didn't have that. We were e-commerce specialists. So make sure they're fit for you. Do they have similar values? Because that's important, because it's like getting married. And can they add value to your business? There's nothing worse than having a non-exec director who just takes the paycheck and adds no value. So please, like, treat them with respect, date them before you marry them. Try not to get divorced. Once they're in, I'm going to tell you a very, very short story. I had a chief legal officer at Gymshark. He said, Steve, once these, true story, once these bastards are in, keep them at arm's length. That was his advice to me. I was like, Chris, why would I do that? And he said, because they'll tell you how to run the business. I said, I'm not going to do that. I said, they just invested a whole load of money into de-risking 4 shareholders, of which I'm one. I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm going to do this, Chris. I'm going to tell them good news early, and I'm going to tell them bad news even earlier. So when it comes to board meetings, nobody's surprised. So it's about managing their expectations. And my man, back to my man, she gave me some great advice growing up. And unfortunately, as adults, we sort of tend to lose our way with this, and especially in business we do. She always said to me, if you don't lie, you can't get found out. And what we did with General Atlantic is we never lied to them. So there was some good news, and boy, there was some bad news at times. But you know what? If you respect them and you bring them along the journey and you treat them with respect, then when it's hard, they'll support you. And that's what you need. When you don't treat them with respect and you hide stuff from them and you tell them bad news really late and you can't hold yourselves to deadlines, then expect them to put you on the hot stove, because I would put you on the hot stove as well. So that was the sort of the first part. And so the second part answered is financial event. Personally, like, I don't know if you've ever been to Newcastle upon Tyne, but there's that much broken glass, even the dogs wear sandals, right? And I'm from a fairly, had a great background, great upbringing, but we were working class. So when tens of millions of pounds drops into your bank account on September the 16th, 2020, what do? Like, one, you like sort of poo yourself a little bit, and then you smile. And we got some great advice, was actually don't do anything with it straight away, just sit on it and just get used to seeing it in your bank account. We probably did that for too long. We should have invested that way earlier into someone like Rathbones, the great legal advisor, the great wealth management company. And we should have done that probably way earlier, because actually you find out that just sitting on cash is probably not the best thing to do. I'm also not a wealth management expert, so definitely don't ask me. The best advice we got was to diversify quite a lot of money into quite a lot of things. So don't back one horse, because that horse might not come in. So we did property, we did art, we did some structured, like lots of different things. We diversified it, but I think it was just getting used to it. And then the last bit I'd say is don't change your friendship group, because suddenly when you've come into money, you get friends from everywhere who ask how your family are, and they don't even know how many kids you've got. So for me, it was like still having the same conversation with the lads down the pub, talking about how Newcastle are going to win the Premiership next year over a pint of shit lager in the local club. Because actually that was really important to me. So like humility, and unfortunately you guys may have seen this, when people come into money, they feel that it really irritates me. You see people having the right to treat people like they're a piece of like dirt, and money doesn't give you that right. So for me, it's like continue to be the underdog a little bit. So yeah.
And as you said earlier, it gives you choice. I'm sure there's going to be questions from the audience, which we'll come on to in a minute, but just one final point. Can you just tell us about your work with Birmingham Children's Hospital, forming the group there called Change Makers, which supports the hospital, which Rathbones are very proud to be part of. But what was the hospital looking at the point when they were talking to you?
Yeah, so Birmingham Children's Hospital came to me. They came out of COVID and was like, we're struggling to raise money. Everybody's hunkering down because we'd all panicked a little bit. And they were like, we're struggling to raise money. And so I did a North Star with the fundraising team. There's about 50 people in that team. And we found out that back to the Canada geese, there wasn't actually any geese flying in the opposite direction, which was helpful. But they weren't aligned. They were like a 2 out of 10 organisation in respect. And we got them into being way more disciplined, really working out what were the key things that was going to drive their fundraising. And I said to them, I said, what's your marketing asset here? Well, they said we do a lot of content and we build a lot of stories. We've got a nice little logo. And I said, no, what's your marketing asset here? And they said, what do you mean? I said, you've got the best marketing asset in the world, which is sick kids. You would not have a better marketing asset. Sounds awful, right? But it's true. So if you want to really raise money, you need to go and really leverage and become the awesome storytellers that you can be. So let's go and become these awesome storytellers around these unbelievable, sometimes sad stories, but sometimes unbelievably great stories. So that was the first thing. The second thing is I said, how do you raise money with the business community? They said, well, we go out and we go for charity of the year. It might be with Rathbones, it might be with whoever. And I said, what happens at the end of the year? They said, oh, well, we have to then pitch for it the following year. I was like, so do you not have a recurring revenue model with corporations? And now we can't make that happen. I said, I can. So we built something called Change Makers, and Rathbones are part of that actually. And we've now up to nearly 50 organisations, certainly in the Midlands, where we've raised nearly just over 1.6 million quid in less than a couple of years. And these guys weren't even thinking about that. So it was about being disruptive with their actual own business model, but actually thinking about what their purpose was. So I'm a big back to North Star. So, and yeah, we obviously as a family office, we obviously donate quite a bit of money into that. And I need to do something back into that. I've done nothing back into the Northeast. I tried to buy Newcastle United a few years ago. That's a lie in brackets, by the way. But then I found out the new owners have got a bit more money than I have. But yeah, so like investing into the right things, I think, and things that make make you feel good, I guess.
Yeah, the purpose and being able to make a difference, I think.
Yeah. And that probably starts with family as well. We paid off all family members' mortgages. We didn't tell them. I was the best moment. So yeah.
Fabulous, just brilliant. It's lovely story. Steve, thank you ever so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed listening and watching. To tune in and meet our next exciting guest in the Inspired Sound series, press the follow and subscribe button. Goodbye.